Hey guys, Tim Reid here, your real estate expert in the Calgary area, and we're back again with another market update for July 2026. There's some interesting trends going on here in Calgary. Want to talk about what's going on, sort of the forecast of what's going on in the Calgary area. Going to break down a couple different communities and then stay to the end because we're going to highlight a community that's got some very interesting fundamentals going on, both for investors as well as for home buyers and sellers. All right, so this is what's going on here in Calgary year over year, comparing July 2026 to July 2025. There's some major pressure on apartment style condos here. That's why you're going to see the total sales volume drop by 9.2%. That's a big downwards red arrow, everybody. That's what's going on because there's so many condos flooding the market. Apartment style condos, very saturated right now, and that's bringing down the average sales quite a bit in Calgary right now. Looking at your residential price point, this total benchmark price doesn't really tell the whole story because it does include all asset types. That's row houses, townhouses, condos, as well as apartments. Down just 2% year over year, down to 569 200. New listings also down quite a bit, 15% year over year looking at last year. Total inventory is also smaller, 4.2% reduction from here to last year. Seasonally adjusted, that's not that compelling of a difference. What we sort of expect towards the tail end of summer, because of course August is the busiest month for vacations, people spending time with their families because kids are still off school, and spending time as a family traveling and doing those activities before we're heading into back to school season. So detached price down just a little bit, 1.9%, sitting at 743.9. That's your detached benchmark price here for Calgary. Semi-detached down just a tiny bit. They're holding very strong. Properties without condo fees are doing very well still, and the resale market also fairly strong there. Good properties for flips as well because you don't have those condo fees, which affects your mortgage approval for your buyer's pool that you're looking at. And the row house price down 6.1%. That can include some townhouses as well and have those condo fees attached. So a lot of new product in this category that's been released in Calgary. Still lots of properties under construction, and that's one of the things we're going to highlight here later on when we feed to that community feature. And the apartment pricing is starting to compress as well, just continually kind of going down a little bit year over year as we're looking at the stats in the forecast. So down to 297.6, your average price for apartment style condos right now, and months of supply. So what does this mean for those who haven't seen my videos before? Watch for these every month. We do them every month and highlight different things about going on in the market. Over 5.4% increase. That's the only green arrow on the chart here this month. Months of supply is up to almost 3.5 months. So that means if all the sales, no new listings came on the market, then it would take 3.5 months just about for all those properties to get absorbed and be sold through in the marketplace. So that's the overview of what's going on. Now let's get into some of the stats year over year compared to the 10-year average, which I really like to see. Comparing that to historical trends kind of shows the story of what's going on with each property type, which depending what you're interested in, gives you a bit more focus on the property you might be looking for. So here's the benchmark prices by communities. So here in the north, we've got a down arrow here, down 4.7 year over year. Lots of new construction in this corridor of Calgary, so that's a major player in the pricing there. And northeast area, 6.6% price reduction. We had a huge run up in this corner of Calgary for the first last couple of years, and now those prices are starting to calm down. You're starting to see more competition, more properties for sale in the marketplace. And it is a busy corridor of Calgary. The Northeast corridor here in this section of Calgary, always lots of properties trading. Big families moving in, upgrading, downgrading, and an average lower price point than a lot of other areas in Calgary. So it is a very popular area of town here in Calgary, but it saw a pretty big price drawdown, 6.6%. In the core, almost no change, 0.7%, very insignificant, but still a down arrow there, moving down year over year. Southwest, always like to talk about the Southwest. It's the only one that's up. It's the only green arrow on this chart because the southwest of Calgary, very desirable neighborhoods here, great amenities, private schools, excellent shopping, and very good access to be able to get in and out of that corridor of town, and a lot of higher end price points of homes in those areas, but also affordable houses. You've got condos, townhouses in this area of Calgary as well, and is not growing that way very quickly. So you've got a constrained supply, which helps the prices stay a lot more stable. So it has one of the best price stability factors. So if you're looking to buy a single family home and you're going to be counting on appreciation to be able to trade up or retire and eventually trade down, this area of town also a higher average price point. So it's more expensive entry point, but you're going to get better appreciation and you're going to hold pricing value better in this corridor. Northwest, again, lots of new a lot of new development here as well. 3.1%, downtrend there, 621 the average price, and down moving into the new southeast and the new south, down just a little bit in the west corridor, 0.9%, southeast corridor, a little bit more new development there, a little bit more competition. So prices have come down a little bit there, 3.3%. And in the new east of Calgary, down 4.4%. So similar to the Northeast corridor, only a couple of new communities there. Again, not growing directly east in Calgary as fast as some of the other areas of town, like growing south and growing to the north. We have a lot more growth in those two corridors. The city's growing much faster in those two directions than it is to the east and the west, and more to the east than the west, keeping those inventory levels down in that area. So now looking at the 10-year average, which is the red line here in the middle, as we see this 10-year trend line. So total sales just a little bit below the 10-year average. So it's down by a little bit. Total new listings here going up above the 10-year average, which is starting to cause those price compressions and more competition, more inventory in the market, more choices, a lot of uncertainty what's going on in the world right now. People are waiting. Some people are hanging on to their homes. They're not putting as many homes on the market. That's why the new listings have come down more than you would seasonally see. So there is a seasonal adjustment, but we're seeing more of a trend, less people putting their homes on the market at this time because they're seeing prices come down. Competition is a little bit more fierce. They're second guessing their options to sell now. Maybe should I sell later? If you're looking to determine whether now may be the right time for your family, we'd love to talk about strategy, give you some information, guide you through the process, and show you your options because maybe now isn't the time. And I'm one of the few agents that'll tell you don't sell now, hang on, wait for a little while, see where the market goes. And if you have to sell now, by all means, we can certainly give you a free home evaluation and talk about our guarantee programs. We'd love to talk to you about that. So that's total sales in Calgary compared to the 10-year trend line. Now, looking specifically at detached homes, we have the 10-year trend line above here, and the sales still below. So still below some of the 10-year average here. Of course, we had very active activity 21, 22, way above, way outside of the normal, and now kind of seeing normal activity 23, 24, and starting to come down, 25, 26, just a little bit different year over year, again below the 10-year trend line. But new listings is catching up to the 10-year average. So now we're really showing that 10-year average of balance. We have an overall balanced market right now, other than certain asset classes like apartment condos. They're not balanced. You're a buyer's market there through and through. And you're a seller's market if you're a builder right now in Calgary, brand new homes that are single family, the developers still have the advantage. It's still a seller's market in that particular sense. And if it's a resale property that's a single family home, it's very balanced right now. And some communities still favor the seller, some communities favor the buyers. As we went over the map of Calgary, you can kind of see those percentages showing those trends. And apartment sales. This continues to be the news. Apartment sales, inventory levels. The sales have not come back up to the typical 10-year trend line, and inventory has spiked above. So that's where we see way above the 10-year trend line for apartment new listings because there's just so much new inventory that's come online here in the Calgary market over the last couple of years because of all the new construction, all the new communities being built. Of course, condos are always a big component of how communities are designed. They need to have density. They need to build buildings like that. They just tend to they have a different market cycle than other properties in Calgary. So semi-detached, you look at our 10-year average here, the sales just a little bit above the 10-year average and listings just creeping up slightly north of that. So we're going to possibly see more adjustments in pricing headed into the future because semi-detached Homes are having a little bit of inventory push, but not as much as your townhouses being built in Calgary that have condo fees attached to them. There's just not as many half duplexes being built because you don't get as much density building those. So there's just not as many of them being built and brought online, and permits being issued for those in the last couple of years. So just not as much inventory, catching up to push that, way well above the 10-year trend line. But we are above the typical trend, so it's going to be an asset class to watch, property type that's definitely good to monitor here over the next little while. And row home sales. So row home rate almost bang on the 10-year trend line here is what we're seeing here. And then new listings though just spiked above to almost as high as it was in 2025 because construction goes in waves. We don't have, 1,000 properties being completed every day. It comes in cycles, and of course we have seasons here in Calgary. We can only construct, for 3 to 4 months if we're really lucky out of the year. So we have these influxes of inventory and then it slows down. We have influxes of inventory, then it calms down again. So we even have over a shorter period of time, within a year to 2 years, we have these inventory cycles depending on the home type that we're talking about. So with the construction trends, this could go a little higher before it starts to come back down. So we could have some absorption challenges, which could put downward pressure on pricing. So we're going to be watching those red and green arrows over the coming videos, and you'll see what's going on there. And if you want to look at private sales, they don't look the same as these properties you see because this is all board stats. There's, of course, private property sales, which don't always track these trend lines. So you can get better deals, different inventory. Please let us know. Get a hold of us at the information below so that we can talk about private sales if that's something you're looking at buying or selling in the next 3 to 6 months. All right, we went through all the different property types, what's going on, what the forecast is, how the winds of change in Calgary real estate market is going, and I wanted to talk a little bit about that Northwest community. So what's going on here in the Northwest corridor is we've had a absolute massive influx of development in the multifamily space. So what that means is purpose-built rental, not condos. So there's multifamily apartment buildings that have been built both large and small. Some of them are still being built. Calgary-wide, there's about 17,000 multifamily units kind of waiting in the wings to be completed. Some of those are going to be done by this fall. Some of them are getting done today. We're seeing, listings of this particular property type happen more and more. And we're seeing a lot of that new product compete with itself. So that's an interesting trend to watch. We're seeing the pricing coming down. Of course, rents have corrected a little bit. So the projections that these buildings had years ago when those permits were issued 18 months, 2 years ago, sometimes 2.5, 3 years ago, these projects were put forth and approved by the city. And now they're finally being completed. Now they're being finished. That rental correction is going to create a downward pressure on the pricing for those properties, as well as there's just so much choice in the market. And particularly in Bowness, Montgomery, these two communities right here, that is where we're seeing a absolute massive amount, and possibly I would say no, not possibly, we're going to see an overbuilt condition here in this particular corridor, and that's going to create more competition for sellers. That's going to create some terms deals. That's going to create some properties to be sold off the market, so they're not having to show the stats to the world, so that people can't see their margins as easily, or what's going on with the construction, purchase cost versus the final completion cost. So this is a very interesting corridor to watch as an investor and possibly even as a home purchaser. If you've ever thought about home hacking, don't know what that is, please get a hold of us. We'll explain that to you in detail, how it could fit into your family's goals. But the basic concept is that you live in the property, rent other properties, and buy multifamily properties. So you can do that. Sometimes you have to buy with commercial financing. Sometimes certain property sizes you can do that with residential financing. And there could be seller financing options as well that we could explain that to you and your family and walk through options, show you some options on the private market that we have access to. That's one of the things that we do that's different. We have access to private sales on a weekly basis that nobody else can see. It's not on the market, will never be on the internet. That's one of the things we do for our clients. That's one of the things that we can provide for you that could be a benefit to your investment goals or your family home purchase goals. So my name's Tim Reid, your real estate expert in the Calgary area. This is your market update for 2026 July. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.